Welcome back. We just established that you need to build that connectivity layer, but before we get technical about that, I want to rewind because to understand today's topic, which is AI orchestration, we have to start by going back to why so many AI efforts are falling apart. Starting in late 2022, we entered this AI gold rush, right? And it felt like it hit us overnight. Suddenly, this technology had everybody's attention. There was this massive wave of corporate spending, and the markets were reacting, and every company started experimenting. You know that already. But here's what went wrong in that experiment. By mid-2025, McKinsey reported that 88% of organizations were using AI in at least one of their business functions. That's a good thing, but only about 33% had scaled AI across the enterprise. Why is that? Because we didn't build systems. We were building a bunch of silos. You had sales reps knocking on people's doors and they were selling point solutions. There was all this enthusiasm about trying new stuff, but over 60% of those pilots were run by a single team. So you had a chatbot in customer support and you had a predictive model in finance, 5 different departments building AI demos in silos. The other thing that happened is that these experiments seemed impressive in a demo phase, but they fell apart whenever they were faced with real-world situations. In other words, in a small controlled environment where you had clean data, it worked beautifully. But then the moment you had to go out and face the complicated world of the business, it crumbled. Experts call it the Tower of Babel problem. Remember that old Bible story where the people had this bright idea they were going to build this big structure all the way to the heavens, and then they were cursed and they all started speaking different languages, and so the construction stopped and the project turned to chaos because nobody could understand each other. Tim Sanders over at G2 explained the reason for this communication breakdown is because we are missing something, and it's the orchestration layer. He says that you get misunderstandings that don't reduce quality. They raise the specter of hallucinations, which could be security incidents or data leakage. And the moment that an employee runs into that, let's say there's a made-up fact in their project, they lose trust and we start to see resistance. So here's what you need to know as a leader who's trying to write your AI victory speech. That move fast and break stuff chapter is over. It exposed to us that the new chapter is about finding a way that we can translate all those foreign languages between your tools. So remember that 20% build we just talked about in the hybrid strategy? Orchestration is that build. I think what a lot of leaders don't understand is that AI at enterprise scale is not a single standalone thing. It's a multi-layer system and it has a lot of components that have to interact with each other. It's extremely complex, okay? But I want to simplify it for you in this diagram that is just made up of layers because this is how we think about AI. Layer number 1 is the user interface. Okay, so this is what the person sees. Think about this like the front end. This might be a portal or an app, a chat, something inside of Slack or Teams, but this is the experience layer. It's the face of your system where somebody puts in their request and a response comes out. Once the human has made that request, maybe it's your customer, maybe it's your employee, you have AI agents. And this is probably the most exciting part for you as a leader because it represents all the productivity gains that you're looking for. This is that specialized set of digital workers, and they have permission to go do things autonomously. They can update files or draft something. They can even help give a customer their refund. Now, under the hood, none of those agents are actually thinking on their own or making decisions in a human sense. They need large language models which serve as the reasoning engine. So this is the part of the system that's interpreting the language to understand the intent and make sense of context and figure out what should happen next. This is where people kind of get confused because we talk a lot about agents as if they're like the star of the show, but these LLMs are what actually give them the ability to understand. Then you have your business systems. These are all the tools and apps that your company's already running on. Your CRM, your finance system, your ERPs, your calendars, the stuff that you already own. So your people and your agents will be using these systems. So for example, sending out a calendar invite, okay? There's also this data and knowledge layer because none of those things can do their job unless they have context and background. So it's the memory of your entire organization. It's not going to pull generic facts from the internet. It's retrieving your databases and all of your documents, finances, PDFs, all the internal things. So an important note though for you as a leader is that that is not just the quantitative data that's in tables. A huge amount of your advantage comes from proprietary qualitative wisdom, how your people actually do the work, the tacit knowledge that's in somebody's head that's never going to make it into a system. We're going to go deeper in that on a later lesson. But for now, just think of data and knowledge as the layer that's letting AI do company-specific work. Now, AI orchestration is the magic part that sits in the middle. It's translating between all those siloed tools and telling the agents what to do next. This is the conductor that turns this set of isolated instruments into a symphony, right? Because in a symphony, if you had all these fancy instruments and everybody was playing their own song, that would be terrible to listen to. So they need a maestro who coordinates all the music. The only way to make AI a dependable part of your daily operations is by having AI orchestration. In fact, Gartner predicted that for the organizations that are going to successfully operationalize with AI, it is thanks to the maturity that we're seeing with their orchestration. Okay, so that's the theory. But I want you to see what this looks like in a real world use case. So next, I'm going to share two stories. One of them is going to be an internal operations use case, and then the other with a customer facing product. All right, so story number one, you have this shipping company. And one morning, the operations manager, Sally, she opens up a chat inside of Teams, and she asks the question, why are my deliveries running late in Chicago today? Okay, so that's the interface. That's Microsoft Teams. It's what she already has been using her whole career, but it has been customized a little bit. So then the large language model is interpreting Sally's language. It knows that the word late means that there was a missed delivery service level agreement, and it understands that Chicago has a regional context, so it's translating her question. A logistics agent gets dispatched to analyze the delivery timelines, and then a second agent is checking on the signals like the traffic, the weather, what could have possibly happened for this delivery to be late, and each of those agents is operating with its own specialized skills. They are working in parallel, and they're constantly reporting back what they find. Then for business systems, they have to go query some of the software that you have. So your routing platform, your warehouse management system, driver schedules, they're able to interact with all these different business systems through what we call APIs. Now, that all sounds great as a story, but it can't really figure out the answer unless there's proprietary context from the company's own knowledge base. So in that knowledge layer, there's wisdom about Chicago-specific routes and historical patterns of things that have caused delays. Maybe some war stories from drivers that you interviewed, and they said things like, hey, there's a lot of lake effect traffic at noon. So all those unwritten rules that are in people's heads, plus the real data that you have in your company, that's all being synthesized. Okay, so then the response gets delivered back to Sally in her team's chat with a report of what might have happened. And if it doesn't know the answer, or if it requires a human to intervene, that would also be triggered at that time. But without orchestration, without that central planner to conduct all those parts and pull the right data and synthesize it, we would end up with hallucinations and maybe even security incidents. So this kind of use case would not even be possible. All right, let's look at another example. Say you want to use AI to build a home cleaning service app. That's going to be your product, and you want to put that out on the market as your idea, okay? So what's going to happen is for the user interface, the customer is going to open up this app. It's called Sparkle. And you're going to type in and say, my in-laws are coming over tonight, and I want you to make my place look spotless by 6 p.m. The app's going to say, okay, snap a few photos of each room so you don't have to explain anything, okay? Then it's going to use computer vision to convert those pics into some structured text that the system can read. So now there's our LLM. It's identifying the room types. Oh, that's a kitchen, that's a bathroom. It's detecting objects and surfaces like countertops, sinks, rugs, and it's converting that to the machine readable text. So the LLM is turning your language into a clear job plan, like a time estimate, a scope that's going to find the right person, and then it's calling all the different tools, okay? So that means that you're going to have fewer back and forth messages, fewer cancellations, because the job has been well defined the first time. So then a scheduling agent is going to use that zip code to find the best cleaner in the neighborhood. Another agent, a pricing agent, can quote the job based on the room type and how messy it is from those pics. And then a quality agent can create a room-by-room checklist. Now, those agents have to connect to payments and route mapping and cleaner availability or, customer support tickets. So all the business systems, the calendar especially, have to be consulted, and that can happen through APIs and webhooks, all right? And then we get to data and knowledge. This is really the moat. this is the competitive advantage that nobody else can compete with you on, because your Sparkle app has this knowledge base and it has explicit SOPs like how to clean stainless steel, or tacit know-how that was captured from interviews with different cleaners in the neighborhood. So they may say something like, hey, this apartment building has a freight elevator, or the front door needs a code. And so all those judgment calls are being stored in the knowledge base. If the place has pet hair, add 20 minutes to the job, right? So that becomes your proprietary knowledge, and that's your competitive advantage. And we're going to talk more about that in another lesson. But basically what you need to know there is your competitors cannot copy that. But for now, today what I'm wanting you to understand is it's the orchestrator that is choosing which agent to run, what tools to call, and then when to ask a human for the part that needs approval. So that coordination is what lets your Sparkle app deliver those results to thousands of homes at scale, okay? So here's the big takeaway. AI does not fail at thinking, it fails at movement. The movement of data, the movement of decisions, the movement between different systems and different people. And orchestration, this matters to you as a leader because your competitors haven't figured this out yet, and they're probably still stuck in that experimentation phase. They're going to hit a ceiling on speed and consistency, but not you. You can get those reusable results by getting this part right. So let's wrap up this lesson, and first we have your discussion assignment. Remember, to get credit for this course, you have to answer the prompts in the discussion part. So I want you to leave a comment on this lesson. Just look for the comment button, and you're gonna respond to these two things. A is one thing that I learned today that I didn't know before, and just finish the sentence. And B, the way that I can put this into practice in my work is, okay? Speaking of putting it into practice, I want you to check your learning guide handout because I've added a bonus resource called the Hybrid Strategy and Orchestration Planner. This is just a diagnostic worksheet that'll help you if you want to really determine whether you should build, buy, or something in the middle. And then you can map the specific silos that your orchestration brain needs to connect together. All right? So download that, post your discussion, and I will see you in the next lesson.